Right, now we're really getting into it. We've done the two NES titles, and next in line is the third installment in the series, a Zelda game with a legacy perhaps rivaled only by two others in the series. Reggie's favourite game and one of the most beloved titles of all time, A Link to the Past. Originally planned as the third installment in the Zelda series on the NES, the project was moved over to the SNES early in development. When it was released, the standard size of a SNES cartridge was 4 megabits, or 512 kilobytes. A Link to the Past, however, had 8 megabits, or 1 megabyte of storage. This led to one of the most expansive worlds in gaming history at the time of release. Ulutp was a game which took many of the features of the previous two titles in the series and boiled them down into what many of us now consider the standard Zelda formula. What could the upcoming Zelda title on Wii U learn from this trendsetter of the series? It's no secret to everybody that A Link to the Past has many fantastic features, such as the SNES's limited colour palette causing Link to sport a very interesting hairdo. It completely expanded on the original's formula, reverting back from the odd gameplay of Adventure of Link to the typical top-down adventure game. It introduced countless iconic Zelda items, such as the Master Sword, Hookshot, and the Big Key. It was also the first Zelda to have an in-depth story that truly developed as the game progressed. To tell the truth, it's actually not easy to come up with 5 unique things from A Link to the Past that Zelda U could learn from, because almost everything it introduced has become series staples. Things like the hookshot and the dungeon structure is now simply the bread and butter of a Zelda game. Still, I'm sure there are things Link to the Past introduced that haven't been present in the series for a while that could benefit the upcoming title. A Link to the Past is a timeless classic that Nintendo must look to for inspiration if Zelda U is to become the ultimate Zelda. Today I'm listing my top 5 choices for things that Zelda U could learn from the SNES classic. Number 5. A short introduction sequence. One of the main issues with Zelda games, especially later ones in the series, is long and drawn out opening sequences or tutorial sections. Twilight Princess is an infamous example of this, with a very long introduction sequence which required the player to perform odd tasks such as using a falcon to retrieve a baby from a monkey. Right. However, A Link to the Past required the player to follow Link's uncle to Hyrule Castle, find a secret entrance to the basement, and then take on the castle, which serves as the player's introduction to combat and to dungeons. Simple, short and sweet. Zelda U aims to provide the player with a world to explore, and I really hope the starting sequence in the upcoming title is short, so we can get to the exploration right off the bat. I've previously found strong evidence that Link here is at the start of his adventure, and he's slightly outside of his starting town. At this point he's only discovered 2 map icons, and is free to adventure as we see later on in the footage. So Zelda U's introduction sequence likely only takes place in the small starting town. Fingers crossed it's short and informative. Number 4. The difficulty. I personally feel that A Link to the Past has the perfect difficulty balance of all the Zelda games. The balance of difficulty in Zelda games comes down to something I like to think of as challenge versus chore. If something like a dungeon is really easy, it'll seem more like a chore, or boring mandatory thing you must do to get a reward. However, if it is challenging, it engages the player and ultimately makes the dungeon more rewarding. A Link to the Past was just this. Challenging, but at the same time not so bloody hard that it makes you want to gouge your eyes out with a Master Sword. I'm looking at you, Adventure of Link. Fucking iron knuckles. A Link to the Past maintains a solid level of difficulty. Beating it with no walkthroughs is an undertaking, but at no point is it mind-numbingly difficult or unfair. This is the level of difficulty I want in Zelda U. It should pose a challenge even to hardcore Zelda fans. Nintendo have been making their games more accessible to the casual gamer with items like the white Tanuki suit in recent Mario games, and while I don't want something like this to be in Zelda U, perhaps a difficulty setting outside of hero mode would be an option. Number 3. Lots of dungeons. A Link to the Past actually has the most dungeons of any Zelda game, with a grand total of 12. I'm not saying that the more dungeons a Zelda game has, the better it is. For example, my favourite game of all time is The Wind Waker, which isn't known for its dungeon count. However, A Link to the Past's many dungeons gives a lot of variety, and also a lot of boss battles, which by the way are freaking amazing. Have you heard that boss theme? Beautiful! Zelda U has a gigantic map, and it should be chock full of hidden labyrinths and evil layers, like the acclaimed SNES title. Number 2. Upgradable items. While some things like the magic meter could be upgraded in Zelda 2, A Link to the Past truly expanded on this by having Link able to upgrade items like the boomerang and bombs. The upgraded items are slightly better than their standard variants, such as the magical boomerang being able to fly much farther than the standard. We've seen the possibility of upgradable items in Zelda U because of Link having been seen with 2 different shields in the footage of the game, one looking more sturdy than the other, so perhaps he can upgrade his items in some way in this game. And while I'm on the subject of items in A Link to the Past, how about the return of the Pegasus boots? This item was sweet. Given to Link by Sahasrahla after the Eastern Palace and retrieving the Pendant of Courage, they allow the player to run at incredible high speeds, and by using them, Link can both traverse the overworld quickly and break things or damage enemies by doing a dashing sword strike. I can't stress enough that Zelda U's map is massive, and we've already got one form of quick travel in the form of Epona. The Pegasus boots in the overworld of Zelda Wii U would both be hilarious to watch, unless the Zelda team can pull off some sweet animation, and incredibly useful for traversing large distances. Number 1. Providing the player with an alternate way to view the world. This might sound a little odd, but it'll make sense in a second. I strongly believe one of the reasons for A Link to the Past's groundbreaking success was the fact that it took a traditional fantasy game world and gave it a massive twist by allowing Link to traverse between it and a hellish variant, the Dark World. Now, this is awesome for so many reasons. It gives the player double the world to explore, yeah, but it's important because it allows them to solve puzzles in intuitive ways. For example, Spectacle Rock is present in the Light World, but not in the Dark World. To traverse to the Tower of Hera, the player must switch to the Dark World, walk to where Spectacle Rock is in the Light World, then switch back to find themselves on top of it. Now, I don't think the Dark World will appear at all in Zelda U, but something which gives a similar twist on the world would be fantastic. Aonuma himself said that they were aiming to put a twist on the open world formula, and while I've theorised in my previous video that this is referring to a straightforward, self-explanatory layout for the overworld, something which causes the player to think of the world as a puzzle rather than a big field would be awesome. After all, Aonuma is definitely considering this, as he says here.
It means you can enter any area from any direction. So the puzzle solving in this game begins the moment the player starts to think about where they want to go, how they will get there, and what they will do when they arrive.
It does indeed seem that the Zelda team are conscious to designing the overworld in a way that will make the player think, and this sounds promising. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. Why don't you leave your top 5 things in the comments below. Next week, we're covering the first handheld main series Zelda title, Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.